A long time ago, back in the 1950s here in the United States, in a small town surrounded by hills, there lived a lazy man with his wife. The man had a little wooden house with a tin roof, a yard with a few skinny chickens, and an old dog that barely barked anymore. Beside the house ran an irrigation canal, a ditch that was supposed to carry water down from the hills. That canal gave water to the cornfields and to the animals in town. But for a long time, no water had run through it. It was clogged with branches, rocks, and mud, and the lazy man never bothered to clear it. His wife was the complete opposite. She woke before dawn, lit the fire, made tortillas, swept the yard, and then went to the ditch. She would stand there with her arms crossed, staring. The canal was dry, dusty. Once in a while, a thin trickle of water ran through, but quickly disappeared into the soil before it reached the crops. "Just look at that," she told her husband as he stumbled out of their room, hair messy, still yawning. "The ditch is dry, the fields are withering. If you don't clear it today, we won't harvest a thing this year, and we'll starve." The lazy man stretched, scratched his head, and always gave the same answer. "Tomorrow, woman. Tomorrow I'll do it." She clenched her lips, sighed, and raised her voice. "Not tomorrow. Water waits for no one. It has to be done today." But he never listened. He would spend the mornings sitting in the town square under a tree, chatting with neighbors. He told old stories, exaggerated tales, laughed loudly. And if someone asked him for help, he was always willing. If a man needed to carry a sack of corn, he volunteered. If a neighbor asked him to watch her child for a while, he gladly stayed. For everyone else, he always had time. For his own home, never. His wife grew desperate. One Wednesday, their turn to receive water, she stood in front of him, arms on her waist. "Today should be our water," she said, pointing at the dry ditch. "Listen, nothing. Not a drop." "I'll check on it now," he muttered, standing up slowly. But instead of grabbing a shovel, he straightened his hat and walked straight to the square. He came home covered in dust, looking like he had worked. His wife was waiting at the door. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I helped Juan with some sacks," he replied proudly. "And your ditch?" she pressed. He shrugged. Days passed. The cornfields began to bend. The leaves turned yellow, curled up. The animals cried with thirst. His wife counted on her fingers. No corn means no food. No food means no money. Don't you understand? One dawn, tired of waiting, she shoved him awake and dropped a shovel at his feet. "Get up. I'm sick of hearing tomorrow. Either you fix the canal today or go to the hills and sleep forever." The lazy man said nothing. He put on his sandals, hung his machete, and walked away toward the hills without looking back. He climbed the dusty path, the sun burning his back. He slipped on loose rocks but kept walking. After a while, he reached a clearing among the trees. There, he saw strange men. They dressed oddly, with jackets and hats unlike anyone from his town. They were loading heavy barrels. One of them, a white-bearded man, looked at him and said, "Friend, help us." And since he always helped others, the lazy man pushed a barrel with all his strength. He ended up sweating, exhausted but satisfied. He offered him a jar. "Here, for the heat." The lazy man drank. The liquid tasted strong and strange. His head felt light, his eyes heavy. He sat by a tree, closed his eyes just for a moment, and fell into a deep sleep. When he woke, the sun was high. He stood, knees cracking as if they were older than before. He touched his face. His beard was long, rough. His hands were wrinkled, spotted. The clearing was empty. No barrels, no men. Frightened, he rushed back to town. But nothing looked familiar. The store had a bright new sign. From the windows came new songs from small radios. Children played with strange toys. On the road passed a truck bigger than any he had ever seen. He hurried to his house, but it wasn't his. The house was painted blue, with flower pots in the yard. A dog he didn't know barked fiercely. A young woman stepped out, looking at him suspiciously. "Who are you looking for, sir?" she asked. The lazy man swallowed hard and pointed at the house, the yard, everything that had been his. "I lived here," he said, voice trembling. "No, you don't live here. We've been here for many years." His chest turned cold. He walked to the square and sat on a bench, head bowed. An old man approached slowly, studied his face. You're the lazy man." The lazy man raised his eyes and recognized in him a boy he once knew. "Yes, it's me," he stammered. The old man scratched his head. "Of course, you disappeared 20 years ago. Nobody knew what happened. Your wife died long ago. Your daughter is grown with children of her own. And your ditch, it dried up completely. The water is gone." He froze. 20 years. Everything he had left for tomorrow no longer existed. With a broken whisper, he asked, "Where is my daughter?" The old man with sad eyes pointed down a street. "There, the white house with the wooden gate near the tire shop. Go, and may God help you." The lazy man tightened his hat and walked slowly, each step heavy with the weight of 20 lost years. At the door, he knocked 3 times. A young woman opened. She had firm eyes and a small mole on her cheek, the same mole he remembered when she was a barefoot girl running in the yard. She looked at him coldly. "What do you want?" I am your father, the lazy man." She studied his wrinkled face, his unkempt beard. She didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't hug him. She just stared and replied calmly, "My mother told me, if you ever came back, not to believe your words. She said, you were good with promises, but bad with action. She said, if you truly were my father, you would prove it by fixing the ditch." His throat tightened. It was as if his wife's voice had returned through their daughter. He lowered his head. "Give me a shovel." She looked at him one last time, then went inside and returned with an old shovel and pick. She handed them over without a word and closed the door. That very afternoon, the lazy man walked to the canal. It was dry, full of stones, branches, and hard mud. He stood still, staring at the disaster. Then he swallowed, took a deep breath, and drove the pick into the earth. Clang! The blow shook his arms. The second strike opened a blister in his hand. Sweat rolled down his forehead, though he had barely begun. His body ached, but he didn't stop. Blow after blow, he pulled stones, broke through mud, made a path. Hours passed. The sun went down. The air grew cold. Still he worked, hands bleeding, shirt soaked with sweat. Many times he thought of quitting, but then he remembered his wife's face, his daughter's words, the withered corn of his youth. "Today," he whispered to himself like a prayer, "today is today." All night he worked alone. No curious neighbors, no company, only his ragged breathing and the strikes of his pick. At dawn he was exhausted, muscles burning, but his eyes gleamed with a strange new fire. Then suddenly, after clearing a hard lump of mud, he heard a different sound. A drop. Then a thin trickle sliding through the stones. Water. He dropped to his knees, cleared more earth with his hands, and saw it clearly. Water. After 20 lost years. He stood, tears mixing with sweat, and smiled. The water moved timidly at first, then stronger, pushing branches and mud until it flowed freely. He staggered along the canal, watching the fresh murmur run down toward the town. By midday, water once again reached the fields and homes. The town noticed too. Women came out with jars, children ran barefoot to splash, men watched in awe. Everyone asked the same question. Who cleared the canal? And the answer spread, the lazy man. At noon, drained, he sat on the bank, hat in hand, watching the water. His daughter appeared. She looked at him in silence, eyes wet. Finally, she leaned closer and said, firm but tender, Now you are my father."
He bowed his head, voice trembling but sure. "Today I learned water waits for no one." From that day on, the lazy man changed completely. No more sleeping late. At the first rooster's crow, he was up, machete at his waist, shovel on his shoulder. He walked straight to the ditch. He cleared branches, removed stones, checked the water flow. Every day until sunset. The town noticed too. Before, his nickname was an insult. Now, it became an example. When someone wanted to postpone a task, neighbors would say, "Don't be like the old lazy man, be like the new one." And everyone understood. The man no longer hated his nickname. He carried it with pride, because he knew it meant something different now. Yes, he had lost 20 years, but he also knew he had woken up in time to change. And so his story remained. The man who once wasted his life, who lost everything to laziness, but who finally learned the greatest truth. Life, like water, waits for no one. Amen.